Hello there, dear friends. Kalidas here to share some thoughts about the most fascinating thing that's surrounding our world, the Zodiac wheel. And this changes every 2 hours. Fundamentally, what is rising in the east changes. The sign changes. So if you ever have any kind of real difficulty that you feel is not going to end, it might not for a while, but you'll feel different about it. You'll think different about it, and you'll approach it differently within the next 2 hours. This is because the fundamental energy of the zodiac changes creation every 2 hours. So what about these ascendants, these ascending signs beginning at Aries, the beginning of our current known zodiac? What is an Aries ascendant, and what signs does the moon and the sun rule? Because the medulla is the moon and the sun is your frontal cortex, the higher functioning brain. And these represent places of need in our chart. The moon is the ego, and whatever house the moon rules, according to your ascendant, that's going to tell you something very important about your needs. And then the sun will rule a certain house, the one right after the moon, and this will symbolize your ultimate success, which very few people actually are able to do. Because to succeed perfectly, to achieve fulfillment, you need help. And if you just go with the moon, which is the ego, which is what most people choose, they can't reach into those realms of superconscious insight that allow true conquest in this world. So real success has to do with learning to tune in with God's will for our lives and also God's power to help us fulfill our desires. This is where the sun will, the house that the sun will rule. So let's go ahead and walk through it and discuss it. Maybe it'll make more sense if that didn't. So an Aries rising has Cancer, the sign that's ruled by the moon always, as the 4th house, and Leo as the 5th house. So what does this mean for an Aries person? The 4th house will be a need. This is the mother, the home, and the family. And so this idea of home and the perfect place to live, and also the inner stability of contentment that comes from having enough here in this world and having a shelter, a place to live. These are very important needs for the Aries ascendant, but also the 5th house is where the sun rules. And this will indicate that they want to be creative, that they have a need to be creative. And if they cannot find creativity, then that inner emotional home, which is the 4th house, the moon, that will struggle. So Aries people crave to be creative. And this is because the 5th house is ruled by the sun. And it shows that their highest nature will come when they tap into their creator's help to create through them. But if we just stayed with the ego as an Aries, we would have one, when Saudi Sati happened, the moon would rule the 4th house. This would be family, and we could lose our home, our mother, or our family during that time. And it could be a great grace for that person to be able to tune into God's presence and lead them beyond their own personal defiance or stubbornness, and realize that their family and their home matters a lot, and that therefore their own creative approach to sustaining it is a dharma that they'll be able to accomplish with God's help. So next we have Taurus, and this would mean that the moon rules the 3rd house. And the 3rd house is the house of the sensory mind and the things that we love to do. And then the sun would rule the 4th house, which ultimately speaks of that mother, home, and family as an ultimate desire of the Taurus. To be happy here in the material world is common for the Taurian. They like to have, yes, the home, the place of contentment, and then also the third house. They like to do what they want. The third house is you choose, it's your choice. So what would happen to a Taurus during Sadi Sati is probably, it would be third and fourth house related, but the third house moon would probably be blocked for a time, doing whatever it wants, and to realize that doing whatever it wants hasn't brought it the perfect happiness, the inner home of perfect peace that they had longed for. So we need to get help as a Taurian in doing the things we want to do, yes, but to ask for guidance and to ask to be able to release things that aren't good for us, habits and things like that that don't serve us in our deeper happiness, which for a Taurian, the fourth house is ruled by the sun, and that's the inner home. It's the emotional mind. It's our ability to be happy. So this connects to the Taurian learning to do what they want, but what is right. Connect what is doing what is right, connecting that with what we want to do. And this would lead to that inner emotional stability that would be symbolized by the fourth house in the Taurian. And my cat just opened the door. So next we would have Gemini. Gemini is a sign, right after Gemini is Cancer. So the moon rules the second house for a Gemini. This is our money, our security, and the material goods that we must have here in creation. And then the third house would be ruled by the sun for the Gemini, and that is that they, again, want to have that free choice, that freedom, that I'm in charge energy. So the second house is money, and the third house is free choice for the Gemini. So definitely they would like their money. That's the moon. That would be the ego. But then the choices that they would make with that money could lead them to trouble without God's grace. And this is because the sun rules their third house. And again, sun is representing God's will, the superconscious, the frontal cortex of the brain. And whatever house that rules will be a very promising one if we tune in with the Spirit. But it will elude us. The ability to do what we like with our money in this world will elude us. In other words, we will choose very badly if we just do it with the ego. So Geminis who have lived for just the moon and not on the spiritual track, they can end up impoverished because of poor choices here in this world, selfish choices that only consider the ego as opposed to what is right for all. Which, if you're talking about free choice, how to make a good choice would equal freedom of choice. And making bad choices all you like, that doesn't equal freedom. So the ability to choose rightly is something given to us by God. It's called intuition. And unless we're detached from that moon, unless we're detached from the egoic hold, saying it must be this way, then we won't be able to accept God's will and see how brilliant He is at showing us the way through life, how much better life becomes when we have the sunlight on the moon. And that's the purpose of this talk, is to illustrate how every ascendant can fulfill their needs but not get caught in the ego. And this is a beautiful part of the spiritual life. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So next, moving into Cancer as the ascendant, now we have the house of self being ruled by the moon. So what do Cancerian people love? Themselves. But what are they also aware needs to totally change, or they'll never have security? It's the same answer. Themselves. The second house for a Cancer is Leo, and that's where the sun will be ruling. So our ability to make it as a successful person here in this world, and being a Cancer rising with all the emotional water that entails, we wouldn't be able to be grounded enough to make it materially. And it would be God's influence in the Cancerian life that would help ground, calm, and clarify the mind to choose wisely, practically, and according to what is best for their highest spiritual nature, as opposed to the watery, emotional ego, which could be very blind when its emotions are unsteady and worried. So Cancerians can have a rough time of it because the moon rules the first house, and that's the house of self. That means that you're really into yourself. But that's not to put a blanket statement on Cancer ascendants, because wherever the moon is in that chart, that will tell us something very important about how they will achieve their self-conquest. For instance, if the moon is in the 7th house, it will be through learning to relate to other people's realities that they will achieve greater self-conquest, as opposed to just thinking everybody else is just like them and then being outraged when they behave differently than they expect. But to make it financially in this world for a reason that feels like it's doing something good, to make it financially with virtue, this would be a great goal for a Cancer rising to hold up to spirit, because it probably won't happen without the money thing. Probably won't come together very stably too soon, at least in the life, without that grace of guidance from the divine. And then next we have Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun, so the first house will be the sun. Who am I? This is a question the Leo needs to really decipher, because if they think they're the moon, if they think they are whatever name and personality they have, they're going to struggle a lot. And this is because the 12th house is ruled by the moon for the Leo. And this means that they want everything. And the 12th house is infinite. It's where finite world connects to infinite reality. Finite dream world of this material connects to the reality of God's infinite, never-ending, conscious bliss, Satchidananda. And so in the Leo rising, there is an instinct to want it all, to want endlessness. And a lot of them, this would be the ego wants this. And so in a sense, the Leo will never be satisfied as long as they're in ego consciousness. They can do a lot, receive a lot of praise. They can become famous pretty easily if they put out the right kind of energy, but they'll lose it all. That 12th house symbolizes loss because it's the end of finite dream world. So what the Leo really wants is freedom. And these are some of the greatest spiritual beings who've walked this earth were Leo rising. And this is because they sense in their ego that they need more than this world can offer. And if you just go with ego, then you can get blocked by the perspective that perhaps if everyone thinks I'm great, then I'll be great. But it's in the transcendence of that little ego self, that moon, that we will find that ultimate sun. Who are we? The sun for a Leo rules the first house of self, which is why a lot of people think the goal, who are Leo rising, think the goal is ego aggrandizement. I am God. I am the greatest. I'm the leader. Everyone follow what I say. And what it's mistakenly, what it's missing there is that this is the moon. It's not the sun. The sun is the creator. The sun would be suggesting that we put emphasis on God's greatness as opposed to our own ability to transmit his truth or to do his work here in creation. But nevertheless, Leos can really accomplish a lot because of that sun rising. And if they do tap in with that spirit of God within, they will become great. They can move mountains. And again, there will be always a risk that they can lose everything, because if they identify that great production that they've been part of with the moon, with the ego, well, that's connected to the 12th house of loss of all things finite. So it will be a sorrowful time. And so now moving on, let's look at Virgo, which is the next sign in the zodiac, and it makes for the 11th house to be ruled by the moon, and the 12th house ruled by the sun. And Virgos love perfection. They're very sensitive to impurity. And the 11th house, where the moon rules, is an environment sign. It's your community, it's your extended family, the like-minded people who you've attracted. So a Virgo person does very well with right environment, right meaning conducive to who they are. And they do really badly when the environment is full of antagonists or people whose imperfections are flaring and obvious. Virgos can be very moody around the environment of chaotic influence. We all can, but in this case, the 11th house is ruled by the moon, so the ego is connected to the kind of people that are around it. And if you got the good people, I mean the spiritually inclined and the compassionate, open-hearted, then that will be a very good thing to support that person's egoic presence. But we need to go further to the sun for the Virgo, because they won't find perfection, which is what a Virgo instinctually wants. It's the sign of the pure. And so the sun rules the 12th house for a Virgo. And this means that our touching in with the infinite, this is perfection. This is the only place that it can be found, is in the inner light. And when we exit this world, we will go to a more perfect one, which the Virgo longs for. And they get very disillusioned by this world if they think that they're going to find endless happiness here, because they'll be afflicted every turn of the corner because of the lack of perfection here. It's 50-50. So the Virgo, in a sense, needs to recognize that this world is a world that imperfections are sent, and includes oneself, and that to work through those imperfections, we need guidance, and that guidance comes from something perfect. So the Virgo can rest once they've found this, and that would be their sun, the 12th house, their higher mind, their frontal cortex, but really it's the presence of God within them. And this video is going a little bit long, so I'm going to finish today at the 7th house, Libra, and we will do part 2 of the zodiac also to finish the last 6 signs. But let's go ahead and go with Libra, because Libra is ruled, or Libra is a Venus sign, but the moon in the Libran chart rules the 10th house. This is the house of public renown, of career, of becoming somewhat well known. Librans like to feel validated, validated that I've done something good, and I want people to recognize it. This is the egoic need for the Libran. But the 11th house is ruled by the sun in the Libran chart, and the 11th house is that community outreach, connection with people. And the real need for the Libran is to help as many people as they can. The real struggle for Librans is that they cannot do so, that with their limited ego, they can't make a difference here in this world how they wish they could. But they can if they reach to that sunlight within them, which will be connected to the 11th house. And this is outreach, it's community, it's people, it's like-minded people. And so the ability to congregate and share with as many people as possible the valuable truths of life, this will make a Libran feel fulfilled in their need for fame. If they just get fame, which a lot of Librans probably do because of their egoic sensing of need for validation, they will be short-lived and they'll lose it. So it's disillusioning to try to become well-known just for ego's sake. But to do so, to try to reach as many people with God's Spirit flowing through you, this is where the Libran will find their real success, their real fame, let's say, in influencing as many people upward towards the Spirit as they can. So that'll do it for today's talk, the first 7 signs of the Zodiac, and we'll go ahead and finish the last signs in the next video. But thank you so much for listening, and I hope that this talk wasn't too complicated and that you were able to gain some insight from it. God bless you.